Got it. So, Bill and I had a chance to talk a bit. And essentially, in doing a lot of digging and talking with the director or the supervisor of the Aquifer Protection Agency over the DEP, it was kind of ascertained that we were supposed to get the maps submitted to us by the commissioner of the DEP. And then upon receipt of those maps, after 120 days, we were going to be able to amend the area. We received those maps back in 08 and 09. So our statutory timeline is a little bit late as far as amending the maps. So in a way, you know, there's no real need to rush as far as this goes. But for the time being, we'll just have to move on to getting our feet situated in different aspects. You kind of all got packets here today. If you're looking at the front of the packet, the first, you good? Okay. The first page is the Aquifer Protection Area Inventory for Southbury. This was generated in 2000. This was prior to the Level A mapping being received. So this was the assumptive Aquifer Protection Area, and a lot more got included that isn't actually a part of the Level A mapping. So this is what we'll essentially be amending as far as getting the inventory list up to date. If you look below, you have land use inventory, 2.4 table of potentially regulated businesses. This is just both of these handouts, 2.4 and table 2.5, are useful pieces of information for you, the commissioners, because these are the uses that we need to essentially inventory and make sure everyone is.
What did you do? Thank you.
Great, no more feedback. Carl still needs one, Sonia. Thank you so much. So these are the uses, and this is a good description on the front page. It's just basic. You got aircraft repair right at the top in the model section. If you go into the 2.5 table, it kind of expands on that a bit more. And then you all should have also gotten a state of Connecticut land use inventory guideline. It looks like this. No? Okay. I'm getting copies. That one. I'm sorry? Yep. Yeah. So Sonia will come back down with those. Essentially, what these pieces of information are the layout of what the inventory is, and then the guidelines are how we will be inventorying and presenting to the DEP. Most of this is going to be done in the office by me, but for the sake of bringing this to the commissioners for your understanding, we've gotten an ordinance approved to hand over the authority from the inland wetlands, or hand over authority of the Aquifer Protection Agency to inland wetlands. An ordinance was approved to confirm the aquifer protection regulations, which I'm going to be sending all of you in an email, just so you have the up-to-date. It's very similar to what you've been using. It's the Town of Southbury Aquifer Protection Regulation packet that we all got back a while ago, except some of the items are amended. I'm going to be working with the DEP to make sure that when those got sent in and approved via the ordinance, that they actually got submitted to the commissioner of the DEP for approval before we actually adopted them, because that's
We've already adopted what?
No,
we've already, through the ordinance and the Board of Selectmen,
that's been done, yeah.
we've adopted.
Which is that?
This is already done?
That is not done.
This is not done.
Is
That's
this the
what we're-
one that says for 2000, the year 2000?
That's the inventory list. Every town needed an inventory list back in 2000 before they were given level A mapping. This is our inventory list that we'll be amending to reflect the actual aquifer protection area that we now,
Once we know what it is, for sure.
that's what it is for sure. Yeah.
I'm still a little confused.
That's fine, Carl.
We have aquifer protection regulations approved and in place in town?
We have aquifer protection area regulations that have been approved through this town.
Okay.
I am unsure of whether or not they were submitted to the DEEP
Okay.
for first approval.
What kind of time frame was that? Was that 2000? That kind of time frame, or
It looks like March of '22,
March of 22?
What?
based on the resolution of the Board of Selectmen, March 3rd, 2022, subject to approval. Be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen approves the attached changes to the Inland Wetlands Ordinance and the Aquifer Protection Agency Ordinance. This included,
Would that be just giving us the authority to?
this was both.
It's
this-
both.
So this was accepting the regulations.
Does it say that?
So, I was gonna send this out to you guys, but you might as well get a chance to look at it.
So, okay, well then,
Oh, resolution's right on the front. Resolution and then a legal notice.
Attached changes being what?
Being the changes of essentially including the Inland Wetlands Agency in the writing of the regulations.
so did they approve regulations current to March of 22?
They approved the amended regulations,
Which is these?
which is those,
Which is this?
which is what Bill has.
Yeah, this is less than clear.
Look, I have a question. So, this list that they have, aquifer protection area inventory for Southbury in the year 2000,
Yeah, they didn't do any of
Uh,
that. That's what I'm
they
saying,
didn't,
this is not at all.
they didn't go and remap the area like we discussed
they
on our
did.
last meeting.
No.
So,
March 3rd.
this just goes by what the original,
This was generated using the level B mapping,
Okay.
which was more expansive than what the level A mapping is. That's why it includes things like Main Street South.
Told us anything about this
Things of
until
that
a few
nature.
months. So, just so that we're clear, the Board of Selectmen called a meeting with no Aquifer Protection Board, published the regulations,
Published regulations and transferred authority.
and then passed it. That was really stupid.
These are the, no, I understand.
Your fault, but
These are the
that's dumb.
things that right now I'm just digging up. Like, we're turning over documents in the land use office right now to try and ascertain
So-
what's been done so far and how was it done to ensure that we're at a proper stage and we don't have to go back and redo anything because statutorily it was done improperly.
Right.
but you don't know whether the state received and accepted that.
The regulations, correct. The mapping that we were given was distributed from the DEP.
I believe what they approved are what the state sent, correct? It doesn't appear that they made any changes to it, so.
Some of the sections are amended, so if you're reading through that, it jumps from like section 9 into what Bill has to like section 19. It skips over enforcement, it skips over permits, it skips over some of the sections are omitted. Whether or not that would have been approved by the DEP, I'm unsure at this time.
So what we have is it's a mess.
It's a mess.
We don't really know what the status of anything is.
I'm working diligently with Kim Zapla. Yeah, no, I
And
understand.
what we're gonna have to do then is figure out what we want to do, much of which we addressed 2 weeks ago in terms of changing the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Send the whole thing to DEEP
Yep,
with any other proposed changes,
yep,
get them to approve it, then bring it back, renotice all of it,
mm-hmm.
and get it passed. Okay, so the only substantive change from what we discussed before is we don't have to worry about timing.
We don't have to worry about timing.
Because it's all screwed up already.
Kim is kind of my, like, liaison in this whole situation. I've sent her the regs that were approved through the commission to see, maybe these are okay. Maybe these have been approved by the commission already. At this time, I have no documentation telling me one way or another. So that's essentially the stage we're at. If everything was done properly and we're roughly moving on track, then the inventory list will be our next step. and then getting the activities within the aquifer area permitted via the regulated activities, then would be the next step.
I'm confused with the regulated inventory that we have. I just skimmed through the list. And down the bottom of table 2.4, it says discharge of wastewater to groundwater. And isn't that pretty much everything on Main Street?
Yeah, but Main Street's not in the aquifer protection area.
No, but these are potentially regulated items, so wouldn't they have to be?
If not, no, not if they're not in the regulated area.
Okay.
Have to be licensed, permitted, and we have to go through that exercise.
Okay,
Only
because
if
I
they're-
thought these items were things that couldn't be in an aquifer area.
They can't. But
If-
it has to be in an aquifer area, and the South Main Street's not.
Okay. All right. I
So-
just figured when it says a regulated activity, so.
Well, if you were
We're
doing,
dumping on every single thing,
well, sure, and every swimming pool would be covered
Everything.
by that too, but
Yeah.
only if they're in an aquifer protection
Okay.
area, and the aquifer protection areas, you should get it right, I guess from what Jordan has said, are the maps we got 10 years ago,
okay.
subject to any changes we recommend and DEP approves.
Okay.
But they do have here items that don't look like they were covered by what we went over last week.
Right, they do.
There's a disconnect between what we were looking at as far as the areas, and then some of these items here are not
Oh,
on those
it's
areas.
no question that some of this is outside those areas. In fact, almost all of it. There's very
And
little
that's-
that is within the area.
That's as a result of the difference between the level B and the level A mapping. So when they actually did the geologic survey and used the well sites to ascertain exactly what the level A mapping was, then it changed. But for the sake of getting this inventory out to every town between 1999 and 2000, they were running off of a larger area, and anything including in that larger area got put on this list. So they already understand that most municipalities, when they go to re-inventory based on the level A mapping that we have, usually, and they assume this, most of the items are gonna drop off.
Well, if
There's
we
not-
do that, then we have to get permission from the state, because it's already been approved by them.
Yes.
Yes, it'll have to get submitted as a amended inventory list. But they're assuming that these items are gonna drop off because most of the time, the level A aquifer area is much, much smaller than the level B.
Well, you can look, for example, at one here is Regal Cleaners on South Main Street. That's not in the aquifer protection area. So it comes off.
Half these businesses probably won't.
This is too broad.
There
But it can't, I mean, do we have the authority to overrule what the state already approved?
They anticipate it.
Literally, no. But that's why we're gonna go back with a petition to amend, first, the boundaries, to make them more consistent with what we discussed and more easier to enforce. And second, with the inventory, because the inventory is out of date. It's just wrong. And the inventory has to be constantly amended as businesses come and go. So even if Regal Cleaners was originally covered, they no longer do on-site cleaning. They're a drop-off now, I
That's what I was
believe.
gonna ask, are
So-
they drop off?
So
Yeah.
they're now exempt.
Okay.
So this was an inventory for map B in the year 2000?
Yes, so if we're looking at the handout Sonia just gave to all of you, did you all get it?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Not a
And then
problem.
And then this list is approved by the state?
Yes. It was
And
actually,
would be-
dis-
and
it would-
So did all of these places had applications submitted?
it was actually distributed by the state. The state distributed these lists
No applications.
because they didn't know whether or not they were actually in the level A area.
So this was really a list of suggestions from the state, more or
Back in
less?
2000, the idea of getting aquifer protection as something that all municipalities were on board with was
Okay.
in its infancy.
I see, okay.
So this was the state's first step into, one,
Okay.
assisting the municipalities, because they took the burden on themselves to generate these inventory
Okay.
lists, and also get the ball rolling with the municipality so they understand, hey, here's your inventory list, talk to your water pollution control authority, get the level A mapping, and then start the process.
So this is not really a list that they approved, they just sort of submitted it as a place to start for
To
the
that,
town?
to that point, Carl, I'll take you, if you look at this handout, under introduction, if you go to the second paragraph right at the top, most of the inventories were completed for preliminary level B aquifer protection areas. The final level A area map may be different, parentheses, in most cases smaller and contained within the preliminary area. So they're well into the
Okay.
assumption that this isn't what the actual regulated uses are gonna be contained in, because the level B is just different, and it was the first step in getting this process started for the state. But when time comes for the level A mapping to be distributed to the municipalities, at that time, they'll have to get to work
All right,
and
what I'm
start.
trying to understand, I guess, is whether we have to modify this list, or can we just start from zero?
There are, frankly, I see the benefit in starting from zero,
That's what I'm thinking.
because this is a garbage list
Okay.
by all intents and purposes. This whole handout has guidance for how you generate the inventory list. They have a mock inventory list all the way on the back. Yeah,
Well, my question is, if it's 23 years ago that they compiled this list, and nothing ever got done by the towns or our town, for example, then does this have any legal authority at all?
it was generated based on a level B mapping.
The answer to that.
I think the answer is no. You know none of these people registered, because there's nowhere to register.
Yeah, and there was no applications done or anything, so I think this is more of an informational thing than anything else, in my opinion.
And if you
That's
go
what it
down,
sounds
if
like
you
to
go
me.
down the list, I don't think there's 6 things on here that are actually in the aquifer protection areas.
Correct.
But do we have a clear-cut response from DEEP saying that this is your authority to ignore this, disregard it, toss it in the trash, or you have to go by this being, and look at item by item to see whether or not you're gonna suggest changes to it?
Well,
Have
there's,
neither of those, right?
That's this right here.
yeah,
This is the directions to generate the real list.
They anticipate you to.
As of
yeah.
now, this is not an official list. This is sort of a suggestion. Take a look at this. And we have not had what we will call the real list, our list, approved by them, so that doesn't exist either.
I understand your confusion, Thad. It seems a little strange that we would have this inventory list and it wouldn't really carry a lot of water. If you peruse this packet that was given out to you, it explains a lot of this. Explains why they did that in the first place, how they were trying to assist towns early on, and what they expect from the town moving forward in actually implementing a true enforceable list that then takes the Aquifer Protection Agency, you guys, into a state of enforcement where they're actually able to track, keep permitted, regulate the particular uses in the actually defined level A aquifer area.
Are we the only town around here that's 23 years into this without doing anything? Or is this
I'm
pretty
unsure.
much all over Connecticut?
Talking with Kim, there's a bunch of towns that are not compliant as far as this goes. Southbury was uncompliant, and we got moved to working on it because we're in the process. But there are towns that, much like this town, had turnover in particular offices where this was being put forward, and then it drops off, and compliance is never actually met. Our goal right now is to take this from the stage we're in, which is piecing together a lot of moving parts that really no one knew were even there, and then actually getting Southbury into compliance with the Aquifer Protection Agency.
Bob, you look totally disgusted.
No, well, I'm just wondering if half of the towns did complete this, is there anyone that would mirror this town and we can use the template as a guide to getting, you know, this thing completed properly?
Well, that's,
I think most of the work is specific to each town.
But there might be
as far
towns
as-
similar that have similar characteristics to this town that septic and,
Well, the thing is, that part of it's not that hard.
yeah,
I mean, physically doing it is not gonna be easy, but because our aquifer protection areas are primarily in residential, covering residential land, there
Yeah.
aren't that many businesses we're gonna pick up.
okay.
There just aren't. We did that 2 weeks ago. We went through it, and we pushed those boundaries out and said, okay, this is all residential. We don't
I
have
just
worry
hate to
about it.
be the guy that overlooks something because somebody else was,
Well, I think Jordan
key,
is dealing with Kim at the state, and she is gonna help us work that through.
okay.
And I could just see trying to work with Fairfield, for example, who might have done stuff. They have nothing in common with us.
Yeah,
You know, it's much more industrialized, and the process is just gonna be very, very different. And they also have a
no, I
much bigger
imagine the
staff.
bigger towns like that, but if we took smaller towns, Woodbury, there's other towns that might have done it too, you know.
Yeah, I just, if there's I guess I would say, if Jordan finds out there's a benefit in dealing with them, we'll do it.
Of course. The
And if-
goal is to,
Thing to simplify it, you know, plagiarize, it's the best thing in the world if you
Yeah.
can do it. I just
Best
don't see
form
that
of
there's that
flattery,
much to do.
yes.
We've kind
The-
of laid out where we think the boundaries ought to be, and then we need to figure out the businesses within those boundaries that we think would be relevant. There are some interesting things on this list, actually, I hadn't really thought about.
on the inventory list?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the funeral home is one that kind of stands out.
Had crematoriums, the whole thing, I was reading, it's
Yeah, but
amazing.
none of those are in the aquifer, even close to the aquifer protection areas.
Golf courses are.
Worry about that,
Yeah.
do we?
Will, no, if it's outside, it's outside of the regulations. Will we be working on an inventory list prior to the modified map being approved? If we are, then we should keep track of who is in the original mapping area and who is in what we added.
Yeah, I think we need to submit, we want to submit all that once.
I'll talk about
Map
this
with
for a
the
little bit.
list of the businesses that would be affected, and that's an excellent idea, I think.
When discussing the idea that we wanted to expand the map, especially with the training school, with Kim, I was talking with her today. No one's done a map change following approval in her 20 years,
Following an approval,
following the approved maps, right?
no one has
Outside of the-
changed an approved
outside
map?
of that 120-day statutory deadline. There are avenues to get it done, and in speaking with Kim, the idea that this commission was putting around of wanting the training school to be within the aquifer protection area through a various litany of unintended consequences that could come out of potential future development of that some 800-acre parcel, she seemed to believe that that was one of the best instances of putting this forward after the fact, and I would agree with her. It follows the guidelines that they have given us, being it, where's my note for that one?
Partially in the proposed area anyway.
It has to be an administrative reason, and it has to only extend to a property boundary. So, based on those two factors, the training school expansion would fall into that. Discussing the other expansions for the other aquifer for the Heritage Village, including Canpack, pushing it to the river, I didn't really parse those questions as of yet, but they would be included in whatever amendment to the expansion that you would want to conduct. I was of the mindset that we would want to get this whole process underfoot and get the inventory adjusted, make sure based on the regulations we have everything approved properly, and then becoming an active aquifer protection agency, moving forward, get all the regulated uses permitted, so now we're in more of a coast position where we can take in new applications. If a new business is proposed, we're looking to see if it's in the aquifer protection area. If not, it's fine. If yes, we're moving into our, administrative capacity. And upon that time, then bringing up the idea of expand, because it's not so much something I think based on the training school we have to rush, but to your point, if we want to include Canpack,
I guess I'm asking if the inventory list has to go in at the same time that the map changes go in.
There's no guideline for it has to happen congruently.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
Is there
if
any,
we pass a modification to the outline of this whole
Yep.
area, then we have to do something legally with these that are already on this list, have already been approved by the state of Connecticut.
Those will just be lifted from the list because they're outside the area.
And then,
I don't
and
think they
Connecticut-
really received any kind of approvals. I think that's just, that was just a preliminary list that the state sent us in the infancy of this whole thing as possibilities for us to consider regulating, if I'm getting that correct.
Correct.
That's correct,
well, it
too.
says the initial inventory for each aquifer protection area was completed under contract to the state in 1999 and 2000. The minute is, you know.
I believe Malone and McBroom generated this list, so they were under contract with the state.
What we're going to do is prepare the modified list and submit that. I don't think this, knowing how the state works, to some extent, they are not gonna go through that list and say, oh, no, you need to include the crematorium and you can't leave out, so they're not gonna do that. They don't know enough, and they're not interested enough.
But what I'm also saying is that if we are not going by what they said 23 years ago in terms of this, what the aquifer area encompassed, then it seems to me like the most important thing we can do right now is to take those maps that we were discussing last week and get those approved by the state. In other words, we approve them, the Board of Selectmen or whoever here in Southbury, and then it goes to the state and it gets approved by the state. Once that aquifer is defined, that area, then we can go down this list and eliminate all the ones that aren't on the aquifer area, instead of
Okay?
trying to.
As a matter of process, you're saying do it in 2 steps.
Right.
Don't try to do it all at once.
This is, most important thing in my mind is to identify exactly where the aquifer is, area, and whether the state signs off on that or not.
Okay, I would agree with that, incidentally. I was just trying to move us up a little
Is
quicker.
the training school still owned by the state? It hasn't been conveyed to Southbury yet, right?
Has not, that I know of.
Okay. Is the state, I know they're already partially in the aquifer, but are they exempt to anything we do, or just simply because of the state? Because they seem to be exempt from everything. Does it need special
It's
permission?
entirely
I think that's a good
possible.
point.
It's entirely possible that activities on state-owned land are exempt, but that doesn't mean that they still can't be in the aquifer protection area for when the state doesn't own it.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if we can propose something to them that they might say, wait till you get it in your hands, Southbury, and you can do whatever you want. or not.
Maybe, but I still
you
think now is our time.
You can throw
We
it
don't
out.
wait any longer to define the boundaries.
Okay.
To address what Thad was saying. Let's get the boundaries done.
Okay.
What do you guys think about, since you're old, actually, guys, think about doing what Thad said? Let's
I am.
defer identifying the particular properties until we get the boundaries approved.
I think you can submit the map and then start working on the inventory. You can work on everything that's in the unmodified area first,
Right.
and then add on whatever, and
I think the
Jordan, do you know
only-
how
the only
long-
thing I know of we're adding on is Cantac.
Do you know how long it takes typically to approve the maps? Because I don't, because like if it takes forever to approve these maps, I don't know if we necessarily should wait.
There was, on the original aquifer regulations that you guys had, where it was stating the 120 days, there was like a 60-day
Okay.
response.
So
from
we're not
them.
talking like
something
this
like
is an
that.
open-ended thing. This
But
is
we're outside of that statutory
Okay.
timeline anyway. Right now, we're working more on a petition to amend the boundary. I have no idea what that timeline would look like. Again, Kim had stated it hadn't really happened yet. So Southbury may be the first, which is fine. Happy to, break the mold as far as this goes, because I think it's for a good reason. But to the point of the inventory, I'll likely be generating the inventory regardless, okay? Because why not?
Yeah,
The
you
stuff
have to.
exists.
No one else is gonna do it.
To your point, Thad, we got this piece of data, the original inventory list from the state. The next piece of data that we got from the state was the map you see up there. When these two don't coincide, we need to rely on that. That supersedes this data. Okay? So we're tasked now with taking this new piece of data and generating a list similar to the one that they generated, but they know it's gonna be altered. They might have got some things right, because the overlap of the two maps are gonna exist in some places, so they might have nailed it on some of these options, which is why they wanted to start this in the first place. They might have gotten it completely wrong when Southbury's
That's what
concerned.
they did.
Okay, it could go one of two ways, but for the purpose of what we have right now, we have this piece of data that is chief among all others. We need to generate the inventory within these boundaries, and to this commission's other idea is also amending the boundaries, like we were discussing in our last meeting, to encompass, one, the Southbury Training School, which is all vacant land. There's not gonna, that inventory isn't gonna change a bit with the 300-plus acres we're gonna consume and add to the aquifer protection area. On the heritage water aquifer, there is gonna be some changes to the inventory. That's the purpose of us wanting to expand it.
But what I'm also saying is that if we've already, last meeting, we identified and as far as I know, we all agreed on modifying those areas so that they conformed more realistically to roads and places where you could actually identify if you're on this side of Flag Swamp Road, you know, you're not in the area. If you're on that side of it, you are in the area. And so without getting everybody to agree on, okay, here is what the areas are gonna be, then the rest of this stuff is kind of moot, because we can go and do that, and all of a sudden we get in a big argument over, wait a minute, that wasn't approved as an actual aquifer area. So making the, not only here, but also getting the state to agree, yes, we agree with your outline of where you're gonna put these boundaries. That to me is the most important part of this whole process.
Okay.
Jordan, when you talk to Kim, which I know you will be,
Yep.
maybe the simplest thing to do is ask her.
Oh, I plan to.
Just,
Yeah.
should we?
What is the
not-
process
Should we
for-
get the boundary done first and then do the inventory?
Yep.
Or do you want it all at once? Because it's easier for us, that's right. It's more precise if we know what the boundary is, and then you
prior
know
to
what to
doing
look at.
inventory? Yep. No, I completely agree.
Not that I
Absolutely.
think any of this is gonna be that hard, because there just aren't that many properties.
No,
That makes sense to me.
no, and yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think, Carl?
That,
Make sense to you, Bob?
sure.
Yeah.
Rob, sorry.
Logical. It's perfect.
Okay.
Great suggestion.
With the map, you have to submit, a letter of explanation, so to speak, as to our thought processes behind making those changes?
I started drafting this already with the intention that we were within that 120-day guideline, and we needed detailed descriptions of what the map was. So I've actually, in a 4-page Word document, delineated the entire Southbury Training School map, as well as where we want to expand and why.
Okay.
I intend on
Okay.
using the same type of, either the same format or, some of the data that's already been generated to explain our case
Okay.
and also explain the expansion on a descriptive format, so, I'm not sending maps with
Well,
drawings all over the place.
Okay.
Good.
So, we were under the gun as far as timelines go prior to this. That's why, I understand the moot point. I wanted to bring you guys something informative, so while we move through this process, you have all the data that you need to make, educated decisions, and while we're doing the inventory, you understand exactly how the inventory list pans out, what's within that list, and what the process is for updating and the guidelines for which to update the list. But, you know, there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. We're still piecing things together. We're gonna get into compliance one way or another, but, you know,
And then, once that area is established, that we were talking about, the boundaries, and boundaries not necessarily corresponding exactly to the way you had the maps, but having them more realistic up to roads and so forth, then we can go and also notify people on this particular list that aren't, you know, a part of the process, and we can notify the people that are in that area and notify the people that are on this list but outside of the area.
I don't think there's any regulation that we need to update anyone on that list, and frankly, I don't,
Where people were all notified and told that they were in this. They weren't?
because it wasn't a level A map. The
Okay.
state generated
Well,
that map
then
for
never mind
municipal
that.
use,
Yeah.
but I don't frankly think anyone on that list knows or cares.
We get these maps identified and solidified and agreed to by the town of Southbury and also the state.
Yep.
And then we can go and identify all the places that are in
Yep.
those areas.
Whether or not, when I speak with Kim, that is the best route to go, or what I kind of assumed, given that no one's done this before, I thought maybe getting us on our feet first, and then when we have some time, going in and petitioning to amend the maps, that may be the course of action, but it's all gonna be dependent on,
Well, if we've been sitting here for 23 years without doing anything, I don't think that makes any sense.
yeah.
I would agree with that. Let's get the bloody map done first. Everything depends on that.
Yep.
Would you say now that the time element is essentially non-existent?
Correct.
The issue about staffing has kind of gone away?
Essentially.
Okay.
I actually have another question too,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought of this now from something Thad said. Do you, I guess we need to take our proposed revisions to the Board of Selectmen and get them to approve it. I mean, they're the governing, we're not.
Correct.
So once we have the map up, first thing is probably to schedule put that on the agenda at a Board of Selectmen's meeting and get their approval before it goes to the state. I think Carl should do that.
Well, when they established, when the Board of Selectmen established this group, did they give us the authority to do that?
They did.
Did
did.
they?
They gave us the authority to act as the Aquifer Protection Agency.
Yeah, but that
Part of
doesn't-
our due diligence is doing just what you stated.
Yeah, but changing the state map, petitioning to change the state map is beyond,
I'm gonna put that inquiry
Administrations.
in anyway and figure out if they need to be the one, you know.
I can go up and ask Jeff if you want.
You absolutely could, yeah. I was planning on going down and asking Jeff, so.
Let's go up and ask Jeff. If the answer is no, then we don't have to do it.
There you go.
He'll be here until 5. Well, 4:30.
No, we should be here, out of here early. No, that's okay. So,
So, do you have anything else that we need to worry about?
I have nothing else for you guys.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion for us to adjourn for this evening and reschedule for 2 weeks from now? Is that good for people, or is that something?
Do you need something to the effect, so instead of preparing the map and submitting it, now we're gonna submit it to we're gonna wait and submit it to the selectmen? Is that what we're deciding?
No. I'm gonna ask if we need to do that,
Okay.
because I don't want to step on any toes.
All right.
Correct.
And if the answer is, oh, yes, we need to see it, then I will let everybody know that.
then we need to
and
have
put it
it-
on the agenda for the next Board of Selectmen's meeting,
Okay.
once we have it defined in a way that we can put it up there and they'll understand.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? And if they say, no, you have the authority to do whatever the hell you want, then we'll skip that and we'll go deal with, directly with Kim. Hopefully that's what he'll say.
Okay.
But my bet is, since he's a politician, he's gonna say, oh, yes, we all have to look at it. And let's call in all the property holders whose property you want to expand onto. We'll see. And I'm happy to do that today if you've got a minute.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Shall we go home? We need a motion.
Motion to
I'll give
adjourn.
him a motion.
Bob moves to adjourn at 4:12. Second. Thad seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done. And we'll do a next meeting as, just like, more than 2 weeks. Does that work for everybody?
Maybe we just get an update at the,
Yeah, maybe we'll just do that. Put it on, well, it's a separate meeting, so give a notice of that meeting if you would, please. And we'll just get an update.
yeah.
I like
think
that.
that's,
That makes sense to me.
maybe we just do that first or something,
Yep.
or whatever, and then,
Yeah, I don't care if you want to schedule the aquifer protection meeting at 7 and the other meeting at 7:30, that'd be fine too. Not 6:30, that's too early. People can't get there. Well, why don't we just leave it, our usual meeting at 7, and then this meeting will follow that. It's
Fine.
only going to be a
that's
couple
fine.
minutes.
That's fine. That works. Just so we can get a motion in the books and,
Yeah.
you know, continue the.
Yep.
Right here.